estate planning. Why do we bother with that? Why would we talk about it? Yes?
Estate taxes, succession duties.
Fair enough. You're getting closer. What's at the root of estate planning and succession planning? Really, what's it all about? And that's what I'm going to share here in a minute. I'm going to work up to the tax end of things. What's it all about? Why? Why are we doing this? Who are we doing this for? Who? Closer. Who said that? Bingo, you're right. Say it louder, please. It's about family. It's all about family. Hey, Nick, how are you? It's all about family. I'll be 60 next month, and I'm finally figuring that out. I used to think it was about business, cutting taxes. Of course it is. Those are all good things. Those are all prudent things to do. But it's all about family. What are we leaving for our family? What's the heritage? Someone else over here said this. What's the legacy that we're leaving? That's bingo. It's about family. Personally, now I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to read my principles. About a year ago, I was ordained as a minister. And you'll find out why that happened. But my principles that I live by are to live a humble, transparent life, stay open to correction, audit my actions regularly, stay in touch with the real world, don't allow people to make you a celebrity, make family a priority, live modestly and give extravagantly, don't build your own kingdom, develop keen discernment, and maintain your spiritual passion. Those are the principles when I was ordained. That's what we all agreed to, and that's what I'm attempting to live by. Those are the principles I live by. My backstory is I was born and raised on a farm near Shedden, Ontario, to Stuart and Doreen Brown. I'm the first of 7 siblings, the oldest of 7. I'm going to go back a little bit here because this really came heavy on my heart this morning. At 4 o'clock in the morning, I got up and I heard this, and it was like genealogy, family. So I'm led to go back to how important family was to my great-grandfather. As I reflect on that piece of my life, I never knew him. I wasn't alive to meet him. But the story that I got was that he traded a team of horses in for our cornerstone, the brown cornerstone in St. Thomas Cemetery. I mean, that was fascinating. Obviously, it meant something to him. It wasn't about the monument. It was about the name. The inspiration for a bestseller, The Wealthy Farmer, came about when I spent some time. I spent 18 years working for the Agamark group of companies. I was 10 years as their controller, and I was 8 years as their credit manager. And I saw farmer after farmer after farmer in front of me that didn't understand the cost of production. I had lots of people telling me I was crazy to bother writing a book about it or to share about that. You know what? Now, maybe I was. You got to be a little bit crazy to do something like that. But the bottom line is I'm glad I did. I saw too many people in front of me without a game plan. They had no plans whatsoever. There was no plan for the future. They didn't know what their costs were. And they were in front of me in credit circumstances time and time again. Helped them all I could. But the bottom line, I knew there needed to be something more. I could have sat back. I could have been retired by now. But you know what? That wasn't in the cards at all. That's what inspired me first to write the first book, The Wealthy Farmer. My minister at the time, Roger Landell, he encouraged me. He said, David, if you're going to write a book, and I encourage any of you in this room to do the same thing, if you're going to write, just take a chapter at a time. I took Sunday afternoon for about 20 weeks, and I wrote The Wealthy Farmer. And then I wanted to test it to see, is this book, should I publish this? Is this really worth it? I mean, it's my thoughts, my ideas, but what about it? So I went to a leading publisher and a best-selling author, David Chilton, and met with him 3 times. David's no different in real life as he is on Dragon's Den. He's a down-to-earth guy. He's a really easygoing guy. Nice man. Well, why would you spend time with a little old farm boy from Shedden? Like, why bother? Kind of thing. But he did. I met with him 3 times. He read the book, the first book. He said, this book has merit. You should publish this. He told me how to self-publish, and I did that. And it became a bestseller. I'll be honest with you, DuPont helped me make it a bestseller because they bought 10,000 copies and put it in with a promotion out west. And when I went out west working last winter with FBC, I started discovering a lot more people knew me out there than knew me here, which was kind of, and now this is 10 years later. I published that book in 1998, DuPont bought copies in the year 2000, so it was kind of cool. There's the first point. We're going to make some points during this talk. Everyone has a book inside them. Write your story. When I come to the end here, I'm going to read a testimony from a young man in one of our meetings with FBC. Write your story. Everybody has a story. Everybody has a testimony, and the world needs to hear your testimony. You can't, you'll hear at the end here, you can't imagine how powerful your testimony is. I was not going to go this direction at all with this talk this morning, but I'm led to, here's where I came from, here are some of the obstacles, you can do the same thing. I'm no different than any of you in this room. The outcome, of course, of the first book had helped many farmers, and like the gentleman that the funeral director, when my dad died, he died of prostate cancer in 1998, and the funeral director was Al Houston from Houston's Funeral Home in St. Thomas, and what he said to me, he said, David, if your book helps one person, one farmer, it was all worthwhile. And that's what we've got to keep in mind. It's not about the big show. It's helping people one at a time. Encourage. Now I'm going to go to staying with the theme. I'm going to go to one of the darkest days in my life, but it all turns out for good. Otherwise, I wouldn't be standing here. The inspiration for that book over there came about. It started on February 1st, 2001. My dad had just died from prostate cancer in 1998. A horrible death of prostate cancer, and interestingly enough, my great uncle, who was a doctor himself in Niagara Falls, he was the first generation to be hit by that. And then my father. On February 1st, 2001, I'm just going to go back and relive this for a moment. I was in St. Thomas. I went to Tim Hortons. My wife and I were there before we had the doctor's appointment with the urologist. And a lady was driving across. It wasn't a very good day. The lady was driving across the parking lot, Tim Hortons, and she was paying attention to what was going on inside Tim Hortons, and she wasn't watching where she was going. Smashed into the front of our car. And then I drove a little bit farther down Elm Street in St. Thomas and went in for my urology appointment because there was some stuff that was going on. I had no idea. My doctor was doing all kinds of, he was doing the digital test for prostate on me and stuff. And he said, there's something, I don't know what it is, but we need to send you to the urologist. So I heard myself saying to my own doctor, I said, do you think we should draw blood? Didn't we do a blood test? So sure enough, took the blood test. And anybody in here familiar with prostate cancer and stuff? Prostate, yeah. What's the number? What's the number that people look for if you're familiar with prostate cancer? What's the number you look for? 8? What's the ideal number that everybody's looking for a clean bill of health for prostate cancer? 0. That's excellent. What's an acceptable number? Anybody know what that is? It's called PSA, prosthetic specific antigen. It's 4. Okay. They took the blood. I'm the one asking for the blood test. They took the blood test. It came back 23.5, and aggressiveness and Gleason score 1 to 10. My father's was 7. He died 4 years after his diagnosis. Mine was 9. So, here we go. So I go to the urologist, we're putting this all together. He does a digital test on me, but what they found was that my prostate, there was a T2 tumor on the back of my prostate that my doctor couldn't feel because he wasn't going back there. So what's the moral of the story here? At that point in time, this urologist gave me a death sentence. He said to me, and I quote, he said, do you remember what happened to your father? Yeah, wasn't very nice. He said, that's what's going to happen to you. So I went home for 2 weeks, bawled my eyes out, couldn't sleep. I'm going like, why? What's going on here? Right? I couldn't figure it out at all. Especially when I didn't realize that my great uncle had passed from that until much later, till my dad was diagnosed. But here's my dad, and I'm thinking like, why me? What the heck is going on here? And the problem was I was being caught up in statistics because back then, I was 47 years of age then. Back then, they were starting to test for that at 50. So 47, here's the diagnosis. It was like a steer kicking you in the gut and one kicking you in the head at the same time. I mean, it just wiped me out. I was like a mess. And again, here's family. Till my baby sister got in front of me, pointed in my face and said, you know what, and let's just be straight here. The enemy, Satan, enemy took our father, he's not taking you. So she got in my face, right? So what did I do? I decided at that point I need to ramp up my faith. Joel, who's here helping me today, I met Joel through Word of Faith Church in Detroit. I spent the next number of years ramping up my faith because I didn't know what else to do. I looked in the Bible and I actually took it literally. I put before you life and death to choose life. So I started ramping up faith. I started studying way back then, after that diagnosis, to start building my faith. I had no idea I would eventually become ordained or anything like that. Was I interested? Was I interested in ministry? If you looked in the yearbook and if the proper caption was in my Parkside yearbook, it would have read something like this. It would have said two things. There's David Brown. Number one, most unlikely to be married. I've been married 37 years. The second one would be very most unlikely, definitely not, ever would become a minister. All right? It's funny how life takes its twists and turns. But it took that diagnosis, what was supposed to be for my harm, turned out to be for my benefit and my good. And like I don't say this crassly, I don't say this sarcastically, but do I look dead to you? Bottom line, I know now it can't take me. But you've got to get there, here, and here is where you've got to go with faith. Because if you don't internalize it, fear sets in and you're gone. That's what motivated me to write that book over there. That book's about overcoming cancer, death, and drug addiction by faith. The day of diagnosis was a real journey. It was it really worked on me. It makes you realize how important the body is, the soul, and the spirit. And the outcome for that, for me, when I wrote that book, was to help the hopeless. Because I know of other people. I've sold copies. Those copies are available for sale for their conference price $10. I usually sell them for $20. But I've given away all kinds of copies. Joel's given me crap for that. But the bottom line is I like to see people encouraged. It's written to encourage the reader. And anybody that's got cancer, anybody that's been diagnosed with cancer, can it cure them? No. Only their heart can. And I took all the medicine, I took all the radiation, I took all the hormone treatment, I took all that stuff. It was awful, but I did it. I did what I had to do. Now I'm going to come back to The Wealthy Farmer for a bit. The Wealthy Farmer was a company that I started back in '98, the year my dad passed away, to help farmers understand cost of production. And I had that company for about 6 years. And you know what? What I found, Peter, you can relate to this. What do you think my great discovery was after a period of time of talking to farmers about cost of production and stuff? And again, this isn't a slight or anything, but what revelation do you think I had? What did I figure out all by myself after about 7 years?
They probably figured out it'll all work out in the end anyways, in the fall.
Okay. Any other farmers in the room? No? Yes?
I'm assuming it reverts back to failing.
Yeah. The revelation I got, and it took me quite a while, the revelation I got was, let me see. I've got a great idea. If farmers understood their cost of production, then they could make better marketing decisions, and they could become more profitable, and yes, save the family farm, right? You know what I discovered? 90% of the farmers didn't want to know. Why? Because then I'd be stealing their right to farm. That's what I'd be essentially doing. No, this isn't working, the math doesn't work, right? So I wrapped that up. Now the Wealthy Farmer is it's evolving into a motivational, financial, hopeful company with 3 books. There are seminars, encouragement talks like this one, and it began about, the company began about the cost of production, and it's evolving into the cost of fear. Nothing but fear about prostate cancer on me. 40 years of fear, that's what it brought it on. Versus the benefit of faith, hope, and love. You know, my journey is with FBC, interestingly enough, I'm gonna roll into FBC, Farm Business Consultants. Anybody, who is familiar with FBC in this room? Yeah? Anybody else? Yep. It's FBC is a 62-year-old tax consulting company. That, to me, when I was growing up, I used to work for, I took an ad 36 years ago, after I was married for about a year. I answered an ad in St. Thomas for a tax consultant working for a competitor of FBC's with a gentleman by the name of Earl Walls. And Earl actually stood in the same place where I'm standing right now. He was a salesperson, marketing, business development rep for FBC, left FBC to start his own business, Agricultural Tax Service. I worked for Agricultural Tax Service for a couple of years, got interested in accounting, and one thing led to another. I began my studies to become a CMA. FBC's been around a long time. They've learned a few things. They've evolved not only into farming, but they've evolved 35 years ago into small business, and now they're doing estate retirement succession planning. I'm going to actually ask you a number of questions in a few minutes about your own situation. You can raise your hands or not about that. I became a tax consultant with my father-in-law's encouragement, and eventually I became a CMA because, you know what I wanted to do back then? I wanted to impress my father-in-law that I actually knew something, that I wasn't just a long-haired galoot, drinking and carrying on and acting silly, that I could actually make something of myself. Yeah, he was the one that encouraged me. And after 10 years of studying exams while working full-time, I became a CMA. I watched my, on the accounting side, I watched my father use an accountant. And this isn't a slam or a slight at all for anybody in the room that knows my father, knew my dad. Dad used a professional accountant, and there wasn't a proactive piece. If there's something I say in all my interviews when I'm working with FBC, is don't ever mistake my passion for aggressiveness. That's not what it's about. I saw my father lose it all because he wasn't getting proactive information. This is a smart man, President of the Canadian Accounting Association. My grandfather was the first inductee in Ontario Agricultural Hall of Fame, Stuart A. Brown. You know, bottom line, these are good people. These are smart people. But I watched it implode because he wasn't getting accurate, proactive information. That's why I stand with FBC today. I see them doing that. I see them working a lot harder at it than a typical accountant. There's good accountants out there, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of good accountants, but many of them aren't proactive. I'll ask this question while I'm thinking about it. It took me 10 years to get my professional accounting designation. 10 years. How many years of tax courses do you think I took? Anyone? More than the 10. Okay, that's all right. Even though I can't add that up. All? Are you saying all? All years for taxes?
How many courses?
How many years of tax courses did I take?
One every year.
Okay. Anybody else?
2 years.
2 years? Anybody else? The answer is 3 months. The biggest misconception out there is that everyone assumes their accountant understands the Tax Act. There's a difference. There's a fundamental difference. One thing about the founder, and I'm going to roll to FBC now. One thing about the founder in FBC, Sam Edmonton, he was a CRA auditor, and then he rolled, and this is about family. I mean, this man obviously cared about farmers. He had a job in a little bit of a parallel here. I'm not going to stay with CIL and retired with a big fat pension and sat back, right? I cared, so I came out. Interesting. I just thought of that. Sam Edmonton cared and came out of CRA, could have the pension, the job, and all that, but he chose to come out to help a group of farmers in the Owen Sound area file their taxes because he saw back in the early 50s and no one had a clue how to do that. Started from there, now fast forward to today, growing at the rate of 2 offices a year now, right across the country, all the way across the prairie provinces. Head office in Calgary, was in London. We're going to the Maritimes in the next 2 to 3 years. We'll be coast to coast in 10 years. That's growth, and there's something going on here, some good things going on here. They're staying proactive. They've got a process that embodies, takes on new people, looks after their needs. And when I sit down with people, I'm actually developing an action plan with them to get the estate plan in place, to get the retirement plan in place, to get the succession plan in place, and to address the needs, because many people are in the wrong structures. They're not even in the right structures. I'm going to ask the questions in a minute. We'll just see where some of you folks are at. But he came out, and now we've got, the company's got 50,000 members later, and still growing. Something's going on. I'm glad they're around because they keep all the other firms. They take them to task. Okay, what I'd like to do now, with your permission, is I'm going to actually take you through the process that I take all people through when we sit down for an interview with FBC. Would that be okay? All right? Okay. So I want to give you a taste about that. Because my purpose here today is a couple-fold. To get a copy of the book in your hands, to encourage you or anyone else you know, that's one thing. To encourage you, whether you do that or not. And the other piece is, if any of you, because we're doing a lot of work with real estate agents, because we're starting to see that real estate agents and contractors are under heavy fire from CRA. Tons of them. Many of them aren't keeping good records, for the most part, or logbooks and things like that. And I'll get to some of those issues in the question and answer portion in a little bit. So here are typically some of the questions. And what I'm going to ask you to do, if your answer is a yes, I'd like you to put your hand up. And if it's a no, just leave it down. Okay? So here it is. And this will give you an idea. And this is how we discover whether there's pre-qualification. Because what I do with FBC is I'm a true consultant. If you don't need us, I tell you that. We don't have to sell everybody. A lot of people have some good people that they're working with. If you don't need us, I'll tell you. So I go through this process here. Current tax plan. Has your accountant, remember, this is a yes, no response to no. Has your accountant asked you to sit down at the beginning of the year to create a plan for the year to save taxes and increase profits? See that? See that? And I know that. Now, how many's in the room? How many's in the room here, Ann? 60? 55? 50 people? 3 people? 3 people. I know. Interestingly enough, 2 years ago, yeah, I'm not taking medication for it. 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with ADHD at 57. Can you imagine? Seriously, like really. So seriously, that's why I had to do that. I had to shut the door because I want to focus on you and that someone else is doing something. It's horrible. When you know it, my wife, you ever seen that Dr. Speck commercial on TV where the thing's cutting out, it's going like that? Ever seen that commercial? It's around the Southwest Ontario. My wife turned to me when she saw that the first time. She goes to me, she goes, "Is that what it's like for you? Is that what?" And I, bingo, gosh, we've been married how many years? 35 years. Yes, it's horrible, right? I'm not taking any medication. I want to stay away. So look, I'm just saying, there's about 50 people in this room. There's 3 people that did that. When I get a note, it's not a setup for a letdown. It's not what this is about. It's to get at the issues. If we know that someone is not proactively planning, we know there's leaks somewhere, that people are overpaying. I don't know, I have no idea what they are, but I know they're overpaying somewhere. Retirement plan, besides RSP, remember, this is a yes, this is a no. Besides RSPs, if your accountant or financial planner asks you to sit down to develop an income stream for you going into retirement. 2, 3, 4, more, good. 1, 2, 12, 6. Awesome, thank you.
I thought that was CPP.
What's that?
I said I thought it was CPP.
Yes, you think? Are you depending on CPP? I just want to ask. Yeah. Yeah. While we're there, nobody asks that I've noticed, A young entrepreneur in business, no one asks them these questions. They don't ask anybody, how much does it take for you to live? Or if you're interested in collecting Canada Pension Plan. Nobody asks those questions. Everybody assumes that it's mandatory. There's ways that you don't need to pay it that are actually tax advantage. Got your attention?
Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody asks the questions. No. I've said this many times. It's going back to me. People don't know what they don't know. Entrepreneurs don't know what they don't know, and no one's telling them anything. Exit strategy. Have you discussed with your accountant a plan for rolling your business over to an employee, a third party, or family? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And last but certainly not least, on the estate planning side, not from an investment perspective, but from a tax perspective, have you sat down with your accountant to ensure that your estate at death goes to who you want it to go to, and not the government? Okay. I mean, 1, 2, 3. This is awesome. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You're awesome. That rocks. Good for you. Again, you know what the results are usually when I'm asking these questions of entrepreneurs? 1 in 25. Not often enough. Has anyone ever heard of a tax law? It actually is a tax law that says, quote, at the time of death, Revenue Canada deems that all your assets are sold at fair market value, irregardless of what's in your will and taxes are due and payable at the time of death. You aware of that? Anyone aware of that? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the whole room. Do you know what that's called? 6, 5.5. Going once, going twice. Okay. Does anyone know what that's called in legal terms? Deemed disposition. There you go. Thank you. Of rights and things. That's exactly what it is. Hardly anybody's heard of that. Yeah, I mean, you just ask somebody that has gone through an estate. Having without a will is one thing, but without an estate plan is totally another. I'm going to draw a little example in a minute. But you know what an estate plan is in its simplest sense? Anyone? What's an estate plan? What do you think an estate plan is in its simplest terms? What do you think?
Wealth transfer.
That's for family. That's the idea. What is an estate plan? What's the objective of an estate plan? What's it trying to do?
Taxes.
Pardon me?
Reduce taxes.
Reduce taxes. But what is it? What are you doing in that process? What is it that you're doing in your estate planning? If people understood some of these things, they'd probably get on with them.
Dividing the scale of your property.
Okay.
Distribution of assets.
Okay. Saving money. Yep.
Transfer of wealth.
Transfer of wealth. Okay. All right. How about this for simple? Will this be simple? You're looking at what assets are taxable and what assets are non-taxable, which ones have tax consequences if you were to die tomorrow, or your wife is to die tomorrow, or if both of you die tomorrow. Simple. Identifying which assets you own that have tax consequences. Period. That's it. Simple. Real simple. But nobody's doing that. No one's doing that. When I go through every one of my interviews with potential clients or members for FBC, I'm explaining that because I want to leave more value than I took. That's what I want. I want people to understand. You understand that, folks? It's a simple inventory. Which assets are taxable? Which assets aren't? What is the tax consequence if those were sold tomorrow? Me, my wife, or both. Period. That's it. And then take those values and connect them to the traffic that the will is attempting to direct. That's all it is. Put it together. That's all it is. That's all the state in its simplest form. Hardly anybody's doing that. And when I tell them about that law, how many of you here? 3? Was there 3 that do that? 3 or 4 people that do that law? When I tell them that, they're all looking at me like sheep in a deer in a headlight. What's that? Do you know what I used to think before I started with FBC 5 years ago? Naively. I used to think estate sales had something to do with siblings or family not getting along. Well, we certainly want to keep them together. That's why we do that planning piece. I'm coming back to that. Okay? That's what I used to think. Until I discovered that part of the act that talks about everything needs to be, is triggered. There's an actual sale there. I used to think estate sales were family driven. No. Who's driving most of them?
Government.
Bingo. This is really cool. Which of the following tax planning strategies employed recently? Income splitting. I'm looking for an example, like partnership or shares split between husband and wife in a corporation. Yes or no? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Awesome. I'm going to share this right here because you came for some information, and I want to leave you with some information. Again, this is so simple, but it's not so simple. When I'm interviewing farmers, and I know there's very few in here, and I'm going to